First time the Obama administration is admitting they held up a $400 million payment to Iran until 4 Americans had been returned. But officials still insist this was not ransom or a quid pro quo. Take a listen.
Given the fact that Iran hadn't proved completely trustworthy in the past, it would have been imprudent and irresponsible for us to not, since we knew this payment was coming and coming soon, to not hold it up until we made sure we had our Americans out.
Would you agree that a reasonable observer could look upon a situation in which cash is withheld until prisoners are released as something akin to ransom?
Well, an observer, whoever he or she may be, can look at this however they want.
That's me. I'm an observer. I want you to help me. So joining me now is Hillary Mann Leverett. She's a former U.S. negotiator with Iran under President George W. Bush. She's also co-author of Going to Tehran, Why America Must Accept the Islamic Republic of Iran. Good morning. Help me out here. John Kirby says the money was used as leverage. It was not ransom. What is the difference?
I think it is a distinction without a difference. I mean, there is, of course, the narrative that it is ransom. That's the worst word you could put on it. But it seems to me that the administration is really ducking something so much more important, which is that in a lot of ways, this was a brilliant, masterful feat of diplomacy. They peacefully resolved a crisis situation with a country with which we've been essentially in a Cold War and sometimes a hot war for 35 years. But because Iran is so vilified in American domestic politics, even the Obama administration, even after making a deal with Iran, seems very reticent, very cautious about admitting any kind of normal transaction with the Iranians.
Whether they admit it or not, couldn't this appear to a regular person just like me that they paid to make this happen? And if they did, what does that say to the rest of the world?
I think it very much depends on who and how this narrative is really put out there at this point. It's really a critical point, and I think right now, the idea that it's ransom is really taking hold. But there is the other narrative that this was brilliant diplomacy, and you can contrast it just with some obvious facts. For example, earlier this year, there was a huge problem with U.S. sailors that had gone into Iranian territory, and we thought that they were going to be held hostage by the Iranians. They were released pretty quickly, and not a dime was paid. So the idea that the Obama administration paid ransom here is something I think political opponents are using against the administration, and the administration just isn't defending itself.
Would you call it ransom?
No, I would call it part of a settlement. It was a settlement, in fact, that the Reagan administration really brought about by issuing an executive order here to put this into The Hague. It's part of a settlement which could have been upward of $10 billion had we lost this court case, which we were likely to lose. In a lot of ways, we got a bargain, and we peacefully resolved a dispute that otherwise could have very badly.
Why do you think we were likely to lose it? When you yourself were involved as a negotiator 15 years ago, we knew about this money. Many have made the argument, why would the United States of America give money, even if it was originally Iran's money, but give money to a country that sponsors terrorist activities?
Well, you know, President Carter initially negotiated this with the Iranians, and President Reagan implemented it most forcefully with his own executive order that took this case out of U.S. courts and put it into The Hague, where they've been deliberating about it now for years. And the issue for the Obama administration was that the court in The Hague was about to pronounce a verdict in favor of Iran that would have cost us upward of $10 billion. In this case, we've had to pay $1.7 billion. So in a lot of ways, this really is a bargain.
Then if it was a bargain, if it was masterful negotiating where we paid only $400 million and we brought those American lives home, why not come out with it in a much more clear way? Weeks ago, when President Obama spoke several weeks ago, it was as though he dismissed it.
You've really put your finger, I think, on the critical issue. Part of it is that Iran is so vilified in our domestic politics, and then part of it, I think, is the presidential race. I'm not sure we actually would have reached an agreement with Iran if Hillary Clinton had still been Secretary of State at that time. She was not very welcoming of a negotiation with Iran, and I'm not sure she would have done it this way. And I wonder whether the Obama administration is actually giving her some space, some room to distance herself from this policy and really put Obama's legacy in some ways at risk.
But hold on a moment. Is that the right thing to do for the White House, to be communicating in certain ways for how it should appear for Hillary Clinton, who's running for president? We know that President Obama is in her camp, but we're talking about his actions and how he communicates with the American people.
I think the consequence of this could be very serious. It could not only squander President Obama's legacy peacefully resolving our difference with Iran over the nuclear issue, but I think it could further erode our position in the Middle East and increase the problems that we have there. I think it is a very, very risky tack to take, but I can't really explain it other than for the politics here in the United States. It has very little to do with Iran.
All right, Hillary, thanks so much for joining me this morning. Hillary Mann Leverett.
Thank you.
Still to come.